early October. Carolina and Jacksonville, those games, the Bears look good. All facets of the game. Everything was working, everything was great. And you want to build to a point because November 17th starts a 3-week back-to-back against teams in your division. I would like this team to be running on all cylinders, firing on all cylinders, heading into that stretch. And that's why this weekend, Arizona, which they play good football to this point, the Patriots are not a very good team. So as long as you get these next 2 weeks, theoretically, you can put yourself back in that position of firing on all cylinders for when we're ready for the Packers coming to town November 17th.
No Bears fan was going to complain with a 6-3 team after 9 weeks. If you told every Bears fan at the beginning of the season 6-3 after the first 9 weeks, you'd be very, very happy.
Okay, so the flip side of that is your record is 4-3 right now. Do you feel like this team is better off at the moment, or they are kind of holding together, and it's not as good as the record suggests based on the way they've lost some of these games? Because I lean towards the positive. I think there are a few plays here and there, and a few ways the ball can bounce. You know, if Tyreek Stevenson doesn't tip the ball up into the air, this team is sitting there at 5-3. A 5-2. It's a totally different vibe in town.
Yeah.
And I feel like this team actually is pretty good. They just haven't been able to get out of their own way in some situations.
So I kind of feel split on it because there's a couple games this year where I'm like, there's no way last year's team wins that game. And I think back to the opener against Tennessee. There's no way in hell last year's team wins that game. Finds a way to win that football game. That's kind of how I felt up until the Hail Mary at the end against Washington. It felt like, wow, like this team, like they found a way to win in the fourth quarter. How many times have we seen this Bears team find ways to win in the fourth quarter lately? Not very often.
Not often, and not last year.
And especially when it's quarterback driven too. Caleb Williams made some really special plays and throws in that fourth quarter against Washington. And it just felt like a couple of games there where it's like, all right, this is different from what we've seen in years past because this Bears team doesn't find ways to win those type of games, and we may have already seen 2 on the schedule. Now, they found a way to lose it in an NFL film-style fashion there at the end, and that's the frustrating part is that it would feel so different at 5-2, but at the end of the day, if they find a way to get to 6-3 when it's all said and done after 9 games, it kind of feels no harm, no foul.
Do you agree with the idea that the most important thing heading into the game is this offense needs to score points early in the first quarter?
I think
get themselves off to a good start.
Yes, because it allows this defense it allows Arizona's offense to become predictable. You're gonna have to do a lot more throwing in the game, and it allows the defense to kind of do what it does best: get after the passer and let your secondary make some plays.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I think that's the game script. If the Bears, like, if you have a performance like you did last week in the first half against Washington again, where the offense is just going 3 and out, not really moving the ball, a lot of penalties, delay of game, false starts, all this stuff, I think that's where the pressure will start to mount.
Yeah.
And the whole concept of this being a tipping point moment for the season may come to a head based on that. Is if they can't get off to a quick start offensively, just get some points on the board and not have it be such a struggle, stuck in the mud, trying to move the ball offensively. We'll take your calls tonight. Tyler's in for Abdallah. It's Blocking Abdallah here on ESPN 1000. Friday night calls, all calls welcome at 312-332-3776. It's sponsored by Tito's Handmade Vodka, distilled and bottled in Austin, Texas. 40% alcohol by volume, namely 80 proof, crafted to be savored responsibly. Your calls, Friday night calls on a Friday night with Blocking Abdallah coming up next.
You're listening to Black and Abdallah, ESPN Chicago. This is Chicago's home for sports.
This Veterans Day, Great Clips will honor the men and women of our armed services, active duty and retired. With what else? Yes, a free haircut. But with a twist, veterans can receive a free haircut on Veterans Day, but that isn't enough. Great Clips will enlist their army of customers. Between now and Veterans Day, Great Clips will give a free haircut certificate for veterans, valid until December 1st to their customers. Great Clips customers can personally thank the veterans for their service. You get your haircut veteran, and they get a free haircut. Great Clips hopes to provide over 300,000 free haircuts this year. So go to Great Clips today, check in online, and get a ready next text when you are next. Great Clips, it's gonna be great, and it's gonna feel extra great to get back this Veterans Day. Also, Andre independently owned and operated.
Howard, I've got a question. It's fall. I'm on the road. It's beautiful, right? Wisconsin, Michigan. Guy behind me is admiring a sugar maple and rear ends me. I'm hurt. I'm out of state. Now what?
Hopefully you'll never experience peak color and handicap, but if you're injured out of town, chances are I can help. Some of our attorneys are licensed in multiple states, and Aiken Law has a long list of referring attorneys.
So you can still help me out.
That's right.
Injury law made personal is Howard Aiken, our attorney, on the Captain J. Hood Show, weekday morning, 7 to 10 on ESPN 1000.
If you have ever thought about remodeling your bathroom but were worried it would take too long or cost too much, then stop worrying. Right now, Jacuzzi Bath Remodel has designed a collection of high-quality custom products and perfected the one-day remodeling experience so you can enjoy your new bathroom faster than ever before. It's a worry-free bath remodel from the most trusted brand name in the business, Jacuzzi. A Jacuzzi bath system fits in your existing tub space. It's a no-mess installation with an amazing style selection, factory-certified installers, and a limited lifetime warranty. Call 800-717-4599. That's 800-717-4599 right now and get 50% off installation with no interest and no payment for 12 months. Replace that old bathtub today with a walk-in shower for a safer bathing experience. If you have lived in your home for over 15 years, it's time to remodel your bathroom. For a virtual or in-home appointment, call 800-7...
Andrea Campbell. Her office investigated a company named Franklin Credit Management and found that it was allegedly violating state and federal law by trying to collect money that homeowners didn't actually owe. Before these loans were zombies, they started out as second mortgages that many people got when they bought a house back during the housing bubble. After the crash, many of the loans were basically worthless. And homeowners say they were told that the loans were resolved through loan modifications. But now that home prices have risen so much, some companies are claiming that the loans are still valid and they're moving to collect.
If you look at zombie second mortgages, the process itself is unfair. You have folks who legitimately believe that they have paid a debt or that it has been done away with, and now you have a random company and random strangers coming back decades later to push them to pay something they haven't received a statement on, they knew nothing about, and are often blindsided.
Now, Campbell struck a settlement with Franklin Credit. Franklin declined an interview and in a statement denied the allegations and said it does not admit wrongdoing. But the AG's office says Franklin has agreed to change its business practices if it seeks to collect on mortgages in the state in the future, and it's agreed to stop all efforts to collect on its entire portfolio of mortgages for people in Massachusetts. How many homeowners are being helped here?
Approximately 518 borrowers, which of course is sizable.
Still, the settlement involves just one company in just one state. A recent NPR investigation looked across several states and found at least 10,000 zombie second mortgages with foreclosure activity. So there are still a lot of homeowners getting demands to pay these old zombie loans. And some of them have been losing their houses. Andrea Bob Stark is an attorney with the National Consumer Law Center. She hopes this settlement by the AG in Massachusetts is just the beginning.
I think it's groundbreaking. I think it's really hopeful because it's kind of a roadmap for other states to use, not just against Franklin, but any debt buyer or lender who is engaging in this kind of conduct with zombie second mortgages.
NPR's investigation in the state of Maryland uncovered the names of dozens of companies that were moving to foreclose on homes over these old zombie loans. The Maryland AG's office says it's received complaints about some of those companies, with no comments on whether or not it's investigating. Both the Maryland and Massachusetts AGs encourage people to contact their offices if they feel debt collectors are trying to collect money that they don't actually owe. Bob Stark would like to see the federal government take more action, specifically the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Rohit Chopra is the director of the Bureau. He says he's aware of the problem of these old zombie loans.
Well, it's certainly something that freaks a lot of us out. We don't want to see some of the worst relics of the financial crisis come back to haunt people. And we're often worried that really old financial lives.
Bob Stark says if the Bureau really is concerned about that, it could clarify exactly what the rules are with this old debt. For example, that debt collectors can't charge a mountain of retroactive interest on an old mortgage if a homeowner wasn't even receiving monthly statements for many years. She says that would be crucial to help homeowners fight off these zombie loans and debt collectors. Chris Arnold, NPR News.
An estimated 200,000 people packed into downtown Los Angeles today to celebrate the LA Dodgers World Series win over the New York Yankees. It's the team's 8th World Series title overall, their first championship parade since 1988. NPR's Kelly McEvers was there. The parade started at City Hall. LA Mayor Karen Bass said she'd be sending a Dodgers jersey to New York City Mayor Eric Adams, but most people didn't see that. Downtown was so packed by that point, the best hope to see anything was to climb a tree. I met the Rodriguez family waiting in a long line for the porta potties. They've been there since 6:30. That's Daniel Rodriguez with his dad, Daniel Rodriguez. Younger Daniel's wearing one of those old school bright blue 80s style Dodger satin jackets like manager Tommy Lasorda used to wear. From what year? Is he still with us? Daniel Sr. tells me about his first Dodger game in 1985. He's originally from Guatemala. He says he and his grandpa, the owner of the jacket, walked the whole way to the stadium. His wife, Sandra, says she got into the Dodgers when she was young with her mom.
As a kid, I remember her listening to the radio. It means a lot. It means a lot.
The family says this parade is extra special. The 2020 season was short because of COVID. The Dodgers won the World Series that year, but there was no parade.
I know we won in 2020. It felt good. I loved it. But we didn't get to do all this, you know?
This parade is about to make its way to us. Sandra says we should get in position.
I got my son-in-law up in the tree.
Okay, cool. Oh, wow. Cool. All right, let's do it. We join up with her daughter, Natalie, who just got married. It's her husband who's up in the tree. Natalie says they showed World Series Game 2 at her wedding reception.
We told the DJ, like, when he got there, I was like, okay, like, if when the Dodgers won that third out, like, it doesn't matter what's going on during the wedding, I need you to play I Love LA. And he did. But everyone was nice for their life. We're big Dodger fans.
Pretty soon we see the buses come around the corner, double-deckers, with players, owners, coaches, and family waving and throwing flowers. At that point, it's just a wall of yelling. It all goes by really fast, and then it's over.
I would have cried. I think for my husband, I know he's been waiting for this forever. My son, my daughter. Yeah, I'm really emotional. This is beautiful.
Kelly McEvers, NPR News, downtown Los Angeles. Let's go Dodgers! Happy Friday! You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News.
Support for NPR comes from the station and from Progressive Insurance with its Name Your Price tool, a way to see coverage options based on a driver's budget. Learn more at progressive.com or 1-800-PROGRESSIVE. Price and coverage match limited by state law. From Organic Valley, a dairy cooperative of small organic family farms that is dedicated to protecting the land and all the plants and animals that live there. Learn more about Organic Valley at ov.coop. From Procter & Gamble, maker of ZQuil, with a range of products designed to relieve occasional sleeplessness to help people fall asleep. Learn more at zquil.com. And from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, helping NPR advance journalistic excellence in the digital age. 6:59 on 91.5 WBEZ. Thank you for joining us. I'm Claire Lane. This first day of November, new month for you. Do your best to have a pleasant weekend We'll be around to keep you company. Clear skies tonight. A little bit chilly. Lows in the low 40s. This American Life coming up next. The concept of hoaxing yourself. People who tell a lie and then believe the lie more than anyone else. We'll take a look at what that means coming up next on TAL. And daylight savings time. It's ending on Saturday, so set your clocks back. We'll be gaining an hour of sleep, so that's pretty exciting stuff. Weather right now, clear skies, 47 degrees at O'Hare. We've got 40 degrees, clear skies in Waukegan. Sun to start your Saturday morning, highs in the 50s. This is WBEZ. This is WBEZ HD Chicago, 91.5 FM. WBEQ HD Morris, 90.7 FM. And WBEK Kankakee, 91.1 FM.
Okay, this isn't news to anybody. Our country is profoundly, cataclysmically divided, disagreeing about so many basic things. The COVID vaccine, was the last election stolen? Was January 6th an insurrection? Or is the Colorado Tucker Carlson show a grandma selfie party? It's two different visions of reality that seem doomed to never reconcile. And maybe this is an inappropriate comparison, but somehow this comes to mind for me. You know that thing in your personal life where you get into a serious fight with somebody you don't really care about, and they see it one way and you see it another way, and you're not seeing eye to eye. The best outcome, the thing you hope for, is that by talking it through, you're listening to each other, you're trying to sort it out. In the end, you either see it the same way, you have the same story, or it's almost as good. You wouldn't agree on what happened, but at least you get where the other person's coming from. They'll get where you're coming from. And neither of you thinks the other's crazy or has ill intent. And I just wish we could do that with our politics. I understand all the reasons why that's not happening. I understand how some people think way beyond that, it's impossible, counterproductive, just a bad idea. But just to say, I wish. I think lots of us wish that. Without that, and we were divided so evenly, nobody can predict the outcome of a presidential election. Without that, how are we going to keep functioning as a country? But who's trying to bridge that gap between great America and poor America? Bring us to a common story. I honestly can't name a half dozen people if I try. But so whenever I hear of anybody attempting to do anything like that, and doing what seems like a decent job of it, I perk up. And I heard about somebody like that recently. Somebody who used to work here at our show, Brian Reed. They did a story on this new podcast that he started with another former This American Life producer, Robin Simeon. Robin produces the show, Brian Harrison. And they did a story about somebody doing this, and Brian knows how I have come to be in my mind about this particular thing, and so he sent me a copy, and I am very excited to present a version of their story for you right now. Because it gave me a glimpse, like a very tentative first step kind of glimpse, and I know that's a mixed metaphor, but just whatever, a first step glimpse of the possibility that people in this country could listen to each other a little bit and look at the facts of something together and understand each other just maybe a little smidge better. We have some other stories in today's program. They're about couples managing their feelings during this heightened political moment, on the verge of all of us getting one president or another, one future or another. We're going to get to all that after the break. From WBEZ Chicago, this is American Life. I'm Aaron Glass. Stay with us. Arts coverage on WBEZ is supported in part by Lyric Opera Chicago, presenting Mozart's romantic comedy, The Marriage of Figaro, and Janine Tesori and Tazwell Thompson's family drama, Blue, this November. LyricOpera.org. WBEZ is supported by Endeavor Health, introducing the Endeavor Health Cardiovascular Institute, a new heart hospital on Glenbrook Hospital's campus. Research, clinical trials, and comprehensive cardiac care. Endeavor Health, your best health is our endeavor.
I stopped growing when I was 11, so I was always the 6 foot, 30, 60, 180 pound goddess standing in front of you today. Yeah. And just to let that sink in, I, at 11 years old, was taller than your dad. Join us for stories
Here's Brian with one of the producers of Question Everything, Zach St. Louis.
So, Zach, you're the one who's gotten to know Dick and Emily, this couple that was fighting over the news, right?
Yeah, so their names are Richard and Emily Newton. He obviously goes by Dick. They're in their 70s. They just celebrated their 24th wedding anniversary. It's a second marriage for both of them. They fell in love singing hymns together in the choir at church. She's an alto, he's a bass.
That's sweet. Where do they live?
They live in Orange County, California.
Okay.
And over the last several years, they've found that they've been growing more and more miserable over something that seems so basic, which is what news they would each want to read in the morning.
We get up and get a cup of coffee and we sit down and we start going through our emails. And we sit next to each other when we're doing that. I'd say, Emily, I have an article here. Would you be interested in me sending it to you? And she would say, who's it from? And if I said Breitbart News or
Breitbart? Is that what you mean?
Breitbart, that's it. Yeah, Breitbart. Or Epic Times. She knew those were really right-leaning and wasn't really interested. I was the same way with her. If she found something on Atlantic or New York Times or the Washington Post.
Dick doesn't trust anything. Now, what is it? It comes from the New York Times, the Washington Post,
The Atlantic,
the Atlantic,
MSNBC,
CNN. That's what
CNN, there's another.
it doesn't matter what they're saying. He just automatically dismisses.
Well, they developed their own reputation.
Okay. I realized we are not reading from the same hymnal here.
So they told me that they started arguing a lot more when Trump came on the political scene. Dick supported Trump. Emily furiously did not. But then, it was after Election Day in 2020 when they had one of their biggest disagreements.
From the beginning, I never believed that the election was fraudulently stolen. I have more faith in people and in our democracy. Dick was more open to doubt.
They were saying that there was a lot of things that were going on that shouldn't have been going on. There was packing drop boxes with ballots. One person would walk up to the ballot box and drop in all kinds of ballots into it.
So this particular theory Dick's talking about, it's from a movie, one of the many sources that he was turning to at the time. It's called 2,000 Mules. Have you heard of it?
I've heard of it, yes. I've had people talk to me about it as I've been reporting, basically.
Yeah, so this movie, 2,000 Mules, it looks like a documentary, but it's really a propaganda film. It's about a stolen election theory. It's not true, but for a while on the right, this movie seemed like it was everywhere. Everyone seemed to be talking about it. Trump actually did a screening of it at Mar-a-Lago. It was in something like 400 movie theaters. I mean, lots and lots of people believed it. It's made by Dinesh D'Souza. He's a right-wing political commentator.
Okay, what's the gist?
The gist is this theory that a bunch of Democratic groups were paying people, who they call mules, to illegally collect ballots and stuff them into ballot boxes in key swing states.
In Philadelphia alone, we've identified more than 1,100 mules.
So there are these talking head interviews, and they're intercut with this grainy surveillance footage that shows like this person like putting ballots into a box, and they're like, see, there's all the evidence you need.
But that's not real surveillance footage, or?
It is real surveillance footage, but it's showing people just dropping off ballots legally. And when Dick watched it, like a lot of people, he thought it seemed really plausible.
It just added to the other stories that I was hearing. Things that were happening in Arizona and Georgia. I'm thinking, yeah, there's stuff going on here that shouldn't be going on.
So Dick is watching this movie, he's reading his sources, and there are so many sources that cite so many stories about election fraud, which is part of what made it so believable.
And also, he's watching the President Trump, say over and over again that the election was fraudulent and had been stolen from him.
Yes, exactly. And then Emily's consuming all of her own sources, and they say the exact opposite. And it all added to this feeling that it wasn't safe for them to talk about politics. Did that feel different from other arguments or disagreements you'd had about non-political things over your marriage?
It did, because there was no give and take. We can argue about, what we're going to spend our money on. We can argue about our kids. We can argue about the neighborhood. But we usually come to some sort of resolution.
shouldn't have done.
What's the mistake you're talking about?
Having someone that was so far left that I couldn't live with.
Oof. Yeah, this was a pretty low point in their marriage, and they told me that they really wanted to find a way out of it.
We were both looking for some sort of, I don't want to say neutral, but impartial news source.
I was hungry for something that I could count on to peel the layers away and really show what's in the heart of it.
They started reading different online news sources that branded themselves as being unbiased, slant-free, that kind of thing. Interesting. And then they finally landed on something. It was a newsletter. Dick seemed to like it a bit. So did Emily.
We both agreed, oh yes, let's read Tangle.
Tangle. Yes, it's this daily newsletter. Comes to your email. It's like a Substack type thing. It's run by a guy named Isaac Saul. He started it. He writes it. They have about 135,000 subscribers. It comes to your inbox every weekday, and each issue is all about one topic from the news. What they try to do is summarize 2 or 3 of the best articles and arguments from right-leaning sources about that topic, and then they do the same thing with left-leaning sources. And the whole premise of the newsletter is that there are people out there like Dick and Emily that are reading completely separate sources, and why not put all of those in one place so you can actually read what those arguments are?
Probably the first thing that astounded me was the transparency. That when they make a mistake, they correct it as soon as they realize it, and they put it right up front.
How is that different than corrections in a newspaper? A little bit, it's the way that they do it. So corrections in a newspaper, traditionally, they are at the end of the article. There'll be like a little footnote. Actually, we got this wrong. It's been changed above. We regret the error, in like little print italics at the bottom. Mm-hmm. Tangle's approach to corrections, it's a bit different. Can you show me? Yes. This is from August 21st. And at the very, very top, the very first thing that you see is correction, period, in big letters. Mm-hmm. In our coverage of the Medicare drug pricing negotiations yesterday, we said that 4 of the Medicare Part D drugs for which the government had negotiated lower prices were overprescribed in the United States. That was false. We misread the abstract of the study and rushed our review process when we included it. A sincere thank you to the 10 or so readers who caught the error. And then in italics right below that, this is our 114th correction in Tangle's 263-week history and our first correction since August 13th. We track corrections and place them at the top of the newsletter in an effort to maximize transparency with readers. So this is different than a newspaper, I see. Yeah. What else did they notice about Tangle? Yeah, so they noticed that it wasn't so sensational, it was more measured or even handed in their language. So, for instance, Tangle noticed that readers on the right would sometimes unsubscribe from the newsletter after reading a phrase like undocumented immigrant. But they also didn't think it was right to call someone illegal or an illegal alien. So they did this big internal review, and they settled on the term unauthorized migrant.
We really liked that approach, trying to filter out all the trigger words or the words that were very highly volatile emotionally.
again. He watched 2000 Mules. He read all of those conspiracies about it. So as Dick and Emily were starting to have this shared understanding of the news again, Tangled did the thing for Dick that no other source seemed to be able to do, that Emily wasn't able to do. And that was prove to him that the 2020 election had not been stolen.
The only thing that changed my mind completely was the fact that I started reading Tangled. It's only because I trust Isaac and his team so much. It's incredibly fulfilling, to be honest.
This is Isaac's son.
He's the guy who writes Tangled.
Yes.
Just like it's actually like so rewarding because the election fraud stuff in particular was one of the most difficult times in my life as a reporter. The month after that election was like dark, stressful, really, really hard work. And hearing that somebody had that reaction, that their mind was actually changed, even one person, it's like, yeah, it makes me want to cry. So am I getting this right? It seems like Isaac in this newsletter Tangled is he who done something that I feel like so many journalists, myself included, have been banging our heads against the wall, trying to figure out what to do. Which is, how do you get people to believe the evidence that the 2020 election was not stolen from Donald Trump? Something like a third of Americans believe it was. It's really threatening our ability to function. How do you present those facts and get people to believe them? And you're saying Tangled did it.
In this case, Tangled did it. Yeah, for Dick, Tangled did it.
Alright, so how did Tangled do this? How did Isaac, the guy who runs this, do this?
Yeah, so Isaac did a ton of work around this whole election denialism issue. It wasn't just one newsletter. Every time a new claim about how the election may have been stolen surfaced, he would spend all this time writing it down, explaining in detail why it was false. He did that in the days and weeks immediately following the election. He continued doing it as new claims surfaced in the years since. But a lot of news sources have done this. Looked at these different claims about how the election was stolen and showed why they were true, looked at the court cases. No evidence surfaced and all this stuff, right? They did, but Isaac was doing a lot of research. Like, for example, in the weeks following the election, right after, he did this 400-tweet long thread that was going in detail into each claim. He was really, really deep in this. But I don't think it was only the research that helped convince Dick. There's something else that Isaac did, and it was in his tone and how he approached this whole issue. Especially around the claims that seemed more persuasive, he didn't just write them off. He assessed them seriously, he presented them seriously, and that didn't make Dick feel stupid. Here's Isaac.
Some of the stuff was really convincing, and proving that they were wrong was not as simple as saying, like, oh, this is just like conspiracy nonsense, like the ballot stuffing thing. That was a plausible way to steal an election.
In 2022, he actually dedicated an entire newsletter, a deep dive, into 2000 Mules, that movie we were talking about.
So when that movie came out and everybody's just like laughs at Dinesh D'Souza, I was kind of like, I'm gonna watch it and like take some of these allegations seriously and see what's up. It turned out they were all bull, but like you only know that if you actually do some of the work.
Can I actually just read you what he wrote at the top of that newsletter?
Yeah, please.
So the title of the newsletter is An Honest Look at 2000 Mules, the New Stolen Election Theory. And this is how he opens it. I consider myself to be both a skeptic and an open-minded person. I am deeply cynical about our government, believe intelligence agencies are covering up the truth about UFOs, and don't feel any particular loyalty to any major political parties. I generally distrust authority, government agencies, and politicians, but I do believe it's wise to consult expert opinions and advice. I love a good conspiracy, a good
election, June started to lean away from her political party. But Rick reached towards it. He started watching Fox News every day.
And it's just stirring something up inside of him that makes him afraid or just like angsty or whatever, and like it just comes bubbling out. Like he's not a big talker to anybody else. I'm the main person I talk to. So I think if he talked to a lot of people, maybe I wouldn't be getting so much of it down the barrel, but because I'm his, I'm his main person, I think I get it all, because I think it makes him very anxious.
Does he have friends?
No.
Not even one?
I mean, he has, so one of the pastors at my church really likes him, but no, he doesn't really like people very much.